Welcome to the Memberships and Courses podcast, which is sponsored by WishList Member. Learn more and get free membership training by visiting wishlistmember.com/free. Now for the regular podcast.
Welcome back to the Memberships and Courses podcast. My name is Tracy Childers, and I'm excited to welcome Tyler Garns from Box Out Marketing. Thanks for being on the show, Tyler.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Tracy.
So I want to jump in, and I know a little bit about your background, just a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit fuzzy to me. I met you several years ago at a conference, and at that time you were maybe just transitioning into your own company, but you had some experience as being the director of marketing and even some sales experience. So how did you get into this whole industry when it comes to memberships and courses?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it goes way back, but essentially I'm just a tech nerd at heart, and I was as a kid. So even in high school, I was taking some programming classes and stuff. In college, I thought I was gonna be a doctor, so my degree's in human biology. But while I was in college, I got a job at an internet startup. That was in, I think, 1999. And then 2001, the bubble burst. The whole company fell apart. Everyone went their different ways. I did pharmaceutical sales when I got out of college. And then a few years later, some of the guys that were at that initial startup started another company and started kind of recruiting back some of the old team. And that was Infusionsoft. So that's how I got involved in Infusionsoft. While I was doing Pfizer, I was still being, the tech nerd and building websites and kind of just figuring stuff out. And so I had a skill set, I guess, there that was needed in the marketing department at Infusionsoft. I eventually became the VP of marketing, and about 2012, I decided it was time for me to go out and do my own thing.
Okay, I think that's right around the time when I met you. Maybe you had just left. So when you started at Infusionsoft, which is now known formerly known as Infusionsoft, right?
Yeah.
What number employee were you there? Because you got in early, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like super early. I think it was like 40 something or other around there. So there was already an established team, and it was growing and it was good. It wasn't like right in the beginning when it was all just chaos and difficult times.
So did you go directly into marketing with them, or were you doing more like the tech setup and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I was hired as the internet marketing manager. So I actually went out there for like a week, spent some time with them. I spent a week in the office just kind of checking it out because they were trying to recruit everybody. And I was like, well, I've got this really good job, good benefits, company car, all this stuff with Pfizer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to leave that unless this is there's actually something here. And so I just spent a week in the office checking it out. And by the end of the week, I was fired up. I was like, this is awesome. And I put together a whole plan. It's mainly SEO, content marketing type of plan. Presented that to them, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so internet marketing manager was my title. I think that was just a glorified title for the webmaster. But about a month later, the director of marketing was fired, and I went into the VP of sales and marketing, which was Dave Lee. And I said, Dave, I'll be your director of marketing. Let's go. And Dave and I have known each other since early days that startup a long time ago, and so he kind of laughed at me. He's like, "All right, I love the enthusiasm, but you're not quite ready yet." And I said, "Look, I'll just fill the role until you realize that I am ready." And he's like,
"I love that."
He's like, "Okay, whatever." He kind of laughing, and then 2 weeks later, he's like, "Okay, you get the job." So,
nice.
So that's how I weaseled my way into being the director.
You were on a serious growth pattern at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean the company was absolutely growing. I was growing personally because I didn't know how to be a director of marketing. I was just I was just antsy, chomping at the bit. I'm like, hey, let's go. We had a good little team. We had a copywriter, a designer. I was doing all the tech stuff, and then we had a marketing assistant, and that was it. It was like, let's make it happen.
Okay, all right. So I'm trying to figure out where to go from here because I know I've actually bought some courses from you and been in your memberships and stuff like that. So I know once you decided to leave working with Infusionsoft, did you go directly into doing your own thing, or did you go out and do some stuff with other people? Was it mostly consulting? What were you doing?
Yeah, I basically started doing private consulting.
Mm-hmm.
I had been a very public VP of marketing. I was doing all the webinars and the trainings and all that kind of stuff. So customers knew who I was, and so it was pretty easy for me to go, "Hey, I'm for hire," and I had handful of clients at a time, kind of charging high end rates for marketing consulting and a little bit of implementation. I did that for about a year, and then decided, all right, this is cool, it's good, but I feel a desire and a responsibility actually to help more
Mm-hmm.
people. So that's when I created the agency. That's when I created Box Out Marketing.
Okay. So I got a question about some of that stuff that you were doing there. You talked about when you were working for Infusionsoft, you were doing like lead generation, SEO and stuff. That's more like front end marketing. But I
Mm-hmm.
know that based on studying some of your stuff, you're very much into like what I would say more back end marketing, getting once they're in the funnel, then following up with them. Was that safe to say that became kind of your specialty?
Yeah, I don't know. The marketing department at that time was just we were responsible for all of it, right? And
Uh-huh.
and we worked really really closely with the sales team to make sure stuff was converting. So I would say I probably spent more of my time overall on lead gen, buying ads
Okay.
and managing all of that stuff and tracking conversions all the way through. Once we kind of set up basic nurture marketing and conversion process and and that kind of stuff. We didn't tend to mess with that a whole lot. Maybe every
Mm-hmm.
4 to 6 months we would tweak those things. But
Mm-hmm.
every day, day in and day out, I'm looking for new lead sources. I'm measuring, all the details on those, and then working with the sales team to understand, okay, what's closing, what's not closing, because obviously front end
Mm-hmm.
metrics it can lead you astray if you're not following it
Yeah.
all the way through. And so that's how I spent most of my days.
So when you started Box Out Marketing, you said it was strictly an agency, primarily specialized and focused on Infusionsoft. Was it
Yep.
just you in the very beginning? Because I saw you at a couple of events, and it looked like you had at one point in time grown a really big team to implement all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you came to that one workshop in San Diego, that
Yeah.
was right after I started Box Out, and at that
Okay.
point, I had a team of like 3 or 4 people, and
Okay.
so that was right at the beginning. When I decided I was going to start an agency, I hired those people right away, and we started
Mm-hmm.
as a small team. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. End up having to let those people go, practically shut the doors to Box Out. Most people don't really know that story, but it kind of burned the whole thing down, and
Yeah.
then kind of build it back up. And yeah, we built a really large team here in Carlsbad. Had everyone in an office here, and then realized like that is a really inefficient model. The overhead's just too much for operating in the small business space. So kind of trimmed that all back down, started over again with a different financial model, and now we've got a subscription model that's working great. And here in the office is just me. So
Oh, wow.
just me. I've got a couple of team members in Arizona, and then the rest of our team is all in the Philippines, actually.
Okay, so it's all dispersed, similar
Yeah.
to the way we've done our team. And your new company, do you still operate under Box Out Marketing, or is it primarily the new one, the factory, correct?
Yeah, the factory is a service that Box Out Marketing offers. So it's still
Okay,
Box Out Marketing brand. And the
gotcha,
factory
gotcha.
is our subscription implementation service, where we help people implement their funnels. We do all the technical stuff for building landing pages and web forms and follow up campaigns and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you said that you started out as a tech nerd, right? Okay, and I
Yep.
always love that because I have a little bit of that in me as well. But I'm also kind of sensing that maybe you became somewhat of a systems nerd because of the way you systematized everything, where you push campaigns. And so, where did that come from? Did it just automatically happen, or was that something that you were kind of infatuated with as you were growing?
I think I'm not naturally really a systems person. It's more
Uh-huh.
just out of necessity, right? I
Yeah, you
mean,
had to.
working in a company like Infusionsoft, you kind of learn some of that stuff. The software itself forces you into some
Mhm.
systemization, but then growing my own company, just realizing like, oh, that's not working. Oh, that's not working. Oh, that failed. It's like eventually you realize, Oh, okay. Yeah, we need to have some really good systems in place. So I
Yeah.
tend to just be like a hacker. I'm like, I hack something together, throw it out there, and it's like, okay, well, how do we replicate that? Well, we can't. So,
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. If you like you said, I want to touch on that. You just kind of like a hacker. So do you think that that's been one of the biggest things that has made you grow? Is like you don't wait around, you just take action? Because I've noticed that you've done a lot of different things in terms of just taking
yeah,
action.
that's a blessing and a curse, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
if I want to launch a new product or something, I'll launch a new product. It might
Mm-hmm.
be in just in a couple of days. We'll just throw together some stuff and put it out there, and we go for it. At the same time, because that part of it is easy for me, I also spin up a lot of things and then tend to get
Mm,
overwhelmed and then have to shut things down, and then I spin up more things. And so,
yeah.
someone who's maybe a little more deliberate, a little more of a perfectionist, really gets the things right before they launch, is going to have some other pros and cons. There's part of me that wishes I had been a little more just focused on one thing for a long time. But I
Uh-huh.
actually enjoy the process of just creating new stuff and putting it out there and seeing what happens.
Well, because you've dealt with so many people, do you sometimes feel like there is no one right answer for everybody? You got to kind of see, hey, this is what works for me. That's kind of what I've noticed. So you feeling that
Yeah.
too?
Absolutely. In the early days of my own business, I was really trying to kind of model myself after other leaders that I had known.
Yeah.
And I realized after some painful years that no, I need to become my own leader. And
Yeah.
and actually in the beginning, I didn't want to be the CEO. Like I never want to be the CEO of anything, and that felt like a real burden that I just didn't want to bear. So
Yeah.
I brought in someone else into the company to be the
Oh, wow.
CEO, and we never actually made him officially that title, but that was my plan. And then I realized like that's not going to work, and I have to be the CEO. And that was probably 3-4 years into having my own company, finally realizing, okay, I got to do this, and I got to do it my way, and I got to be comfortable with it, and I just got to own up to it.
Man, that's a great piece of advice right there. Um, Let me ask you a question. I know that I'm always kind of interested in people that have their hobbies, because I think it's important to do things that are fun. That's part of why we're in business. I know that you're really big into surfing. So, how do you work? Because isn't surfing you typically kind of need to go in the morning to get the right waves? It's like, how do you work all that in?
Yeah, I don't surf as much as I probably should. I've
Okay.
gotten really picky in my old age. So, like my
Okay.
boys, they're always like, "Hey, Dad, let's go surf," and I'll just look at the report and I'm like, it's not that great." And I always just tell them, like, I've surfed a lot of terrible waves in my life. I don't need to
Hmm.
surf any more terrible waves. Like, if it's really good, I'll go.
You
But I get out.
prioritize.
Yeah, I get out once or twice a week. Yeah, typically in the morning. But I
Hmm.
almost every Tuesday morning I go. I've got a group of young men from church that I take
Oh, cool.
surfing, and we'll have like a little, gospel discussion before, and then we head out in the water, and then Saturdays, it tends to be a little easier, so I'll go on Saturdays. But then, the great thing about having my own business is it's flexible, and
Hmm.
if it's just pumping one day, I'm gonna be out there. I'll get to work late that day.
So, well, that's very cool. So, if you're doing that with a young group of younger guys, so you're doing some mentoring with them, how is that changing the way you think about things as you go on? Are you feeling that makes you driven more to work hard just because you feel good doing it, or how's that?
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of ties back to that idea of not wanting to be the CEO.
Mm,
I I just never thought of myself as like the leader.
mm-hmm.
And when I finally kind of owned up to the fact that I have to do this for my company, I
Mm-hmm.
realized that if I actually learn good leadership skills, then it blesses my life in a bunch of different ways. It blesses me at home with my kids. It blesses, these youth that I work with at church, and other church responsibilities. There's so many other benefits of learning those skills, and I'm still learning them. I'm no, would
Yeah.
never claim to be some great leader. But I realize that the more I become a better leader, the more I can derive great satisfaction out of life, because we're all greatly satisfied when we help other people, right? I mean, that's really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. You can find you can find fleeting happiness in things that are self-serving, but real lasting joy comes from serving others. And so, yeah, I'm just working on trying to get better at that.
Man, I love that. Tyler, I got a question for you because you worked with so many different people, and you know, we've talked about your company, your agency actually built membership sites for people. You've probably worked with a lot of successful people, and then some people that maybe almost got there and then didn't do it. What would you say is probably the main difference between the people who made it and the people who didn't?
Such a great question. It's really hard to pinpoint it, but one of the things that is definitely a kind of a standout trait is the people who make it will grind through the terribleness to make it, right? They're going to put in the time and the effort, and they're going to make it happen no matter what. So yes, we've worked with a lot of, big names, influencers, whatever, with large lists and large audiences, and build their membership sites and help them do book launches and things like that. And then on the other hand, we've worked with quite a few people who see all of that and they have some expertise and they're like, I'm going to be that. They write a book, they get it published, they, pay us a bunch of money to build out the membership site or whatever. And they expect that day one, they're just going to have the money flooding in. And when it doesn't happen, they give up. Or they actually, what they do first is they point fingers, right? Is they start blaming everyone else. They'll blame the copywriter. They'll blame us, the agency. They'll blame, someone who helped them write the book, whatever. They start blaming like, oh, they didn't know what they're doing. They're, whatever you want to call it, shysters, they're trying to steal my money. Yeah. And usually it comes down to the fact that they just haven't put in the sweat equity, right? Like, yeah. It's very rare that like a business just you turn it on and it just explodes, right? I mean, it's years and years in the making. The people that we work with that are very successful, they're years in the making. Years of grinding it out, years of blood, sweat, and tears, and then you see them and you think that it's this overnight success, and it's just not. And so that trait of being able to recognize, hey, there's a lot of work to do here, and it's not going to be an overnight success, and I got to be willing to put in the grind. That's probably the biggest defining factor. Too easy these days, right?
That's totally interesting. It reminds me of this podcast interview I heard from Amy Porterfield, and she was interviewing, and I've forgotten her name, but all of a sudden she was everywhere. Her books, I saw her books in Target. I mean, books were everywhere. And she's saying, everybody's saying she's an overnight success. But what you don't know is like she's been showing up day after day for like the last 15 years. Yeah. And it's like when I hearing you say that, it's like that's exactly what so many of those stories are like. People just don't know. Right?
I remember talking to I'm going to blank on her name now. I think it's Anita Campbell. She's the one who started a company called Small Biz Trends. It became like the largest small business blog in the world many years ago. This is back when I was working at Infusionsoft. But I remember hearing her speak on stage, and she talked about how many years she wrote blog posts with nobody reading them.
Yeah.
It was literally years. Every day she'd write a blog post, post it on there. Wow. For years. Nobody's reading them. Then finally like starts to get some traction. And she built up that company, and it was basically a large media company, and ended up selling it and did really well. And but that took many, many years. A lot of just like how hard is it to keep writing blog posts when no one's listening? Or nowadays that might be akin to like, you're posting on social media over and over, no one's listening. And you just feel like, well, no one cares, or I'm terrible at this, or whatever. A lot of self-doubt starts creeping in. Most people just pack it up and go home. And those that fight through it eventually find success.
So you bring up something interesting that if I were to ask you something like I'd rather not talk about, just go ahead. Right?
I'm pretty open.
But you said self-doubt starts to creep in. And so in our industry, sometimes we call that imposter syndrome. And I know looking out, I've always looked at you and like, man, Tyler's got, he's doing this and he's like taking action and stuff. And then a lot of times we don't realize that everybody that's an entrepreneur typically goes through some sort of struggle. Have you ever had to deal with the imposter syndrome as well?
Only every single day. right? I mean, it's just, it's true. Everything you do, there's that little thought in the back of your head, well,
Yeah.
who are you to be doing this? Or that's not going to work. Or, are you sure? Like, that's a waste of time. It's like everything you do, there's always that little bit of doubt. And sometimes those doubts grow and they get bigger and bigger, and it gets really tough to deal with it. Other times you can shake it off. I have found, and this is a common practice, right, amongst successful people. I've found that for me, I have a document. Actually, it's in my car right now, but I usually bring it into the office every day and I read it. And that document is an I am statement. And it reminds me of who I am as a person, right? And then on the other side has my goals. And so I just like reset every morning, just like, okay, let's be clear on who I am. And it's, call it positive affirmations or, whatever you want to call it. But there's something to kind of just getting your mind right so that you can fight off those thoughts all day long. Because if you don't, those thoughts will beat you up.
Absolutely. So how did you come up with that? Is that something you learned from somebody else that was a mentor of yours, or you read it in a book? You just like, look, I have to do this, and you just sat down with a piece of paper and wrote it out?
Combination of a couple things, probably a lot of things, but the two that really stick out are the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So that's classic. It's been around 100 years or something like that, and it lays out kind of a pretty basic formula for setting goals, creating them, writing them down, reading them every day, and creating that vision for where you're going and not letting anything get in your way. That combined with when I was working at Infusionsoft, Clay Mask, the CEO, had hired a coach. That coach had helped him develop this I am statement idea. And it's not just something you sit down and write. Like, it requires a lot of soul searching. And for me, it's a spiritual activity. For everyone, it's not going to be, that's okay. But for me, it's a spiritual activity. If I believe that I come from a loving heavenly Father, why did he create me? What God-given talents did he give me? And why did he give me those? Like, that's the kind of soul searching you're doing, trying to figure out, like, what is my purpose on this earth? So if you don't believe in God, that's okay. You can still kind of sit and meditate and really think through that. Like, what am I all about? And this isn't necessarily aspirational. It's like, who am I really at the core? I believe that we are children of God, and God created us for amazing purposes. And so as you discover that, it lights a fire within you. If you remove God out of it, you still got to come down to like, okay, well, why am I here? What is my purpose in being here? And I promise you, it's not like to just sit on your butt and waste away. Like, there's a purpose there, and if you discover it, you can write that down and then utilize that as a powerful point of leverage every day just to get your mind right.
That's a powerful piece of advice, to just totally focus on that. Tyler, I keep going back to saying you've been in this a long time. And I remember you had a course, and it was you must have spent a lot of money producing it, because it was a video course. It was on DVDs and everything. Nowadays, back then it seemed like, oh, this is what you have to do. You talking about big packaging. I used to teach people, oh, you want to make the thump factor, ship it to them. Now it's almost all digital, right? So did you see that coming, or you feel kind of like it just gradually got there over time? Do you still think that there's a place for physical products, or is like, I don't even really have a DVD player hooked up.
Right. Weird. Yeah, it's a great question. When I created that course and created the home study version, which came in the big package with all the DVDs and everything, I don't think in my mind I was thinking, okay, in the next few years DVDs will be gone, and it'll all be online. I don't think I was able to. If you asked me and we talked about it, maybe we could kind of come to that conclusion, but I wasn't thinking about that. But it's just something that's evolved for sure. And I haven't produced any DVDs since. That was over 10 years ago. That was 2012 when I first started my business. That was the very first event I did. The very first thing I did as a new business owner is I held that event, recorded it, created the home study course and whatever. So, it's interesting.
as a tech nerd, then it actually brings us into kind of a cool space with memberships and courses. And I know you used Infusionsoft. I'll always say Infusionsoft, but keep
Yep.
Max Classic or you developed some really ninja tactics, and they dealt with engagement. Um, I remember you maybe, I don't know if you explained how you did it or I just saw it happen to me. It's like you were setting a field every time they logged in, and then you were setting a sequence. And so how often were you asking people like, hey, I see that it's been a while since you logged into the site. And did you see that that helped with engagement or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just taking a step back, it all comes down to figuring out how to use all this cool automation technology in ways that feel normal and natural, right? Because most of the time, I would say, when people automate stuff, it doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
And so you really have to take that step back and go like, okay, what would I do if I actually didn't have any automation? What would I do manually, personally? And then how do I automate that? So when you think about like, I've got a membership site and I've got people logging in, like if I wanted to manually go through the list every day and see, okay, who logged in today, who logged in yesterday, who hasn't logged in 4 days, I might go like, yeah, you know what? I don't think it'd be too annoying if after about a week, I reached out to someone who hasn't logged in. Now, if it was just yesterday, that's going to be, annoying.
Yeah.
But a week, yeah, maybe that's okay. So that's kind of how I think through things. Like, what would I do naturally, and then can I automate that? And so, yeah, those things absolutely help. Whether it's login triggers for keeping people engaged in a membership site, gamifying membership sites, of course, that's become a big thing. You tease them along with promises of more content that opens up, or prizes, or badges, or whatever if they do certain things. So that helps. But yeah, any of those types of tactics can work. I would just say really think about how to make it normal and natural instead of just I can automate it just because I can.
Yeah. Okay, so you just mentioned gamification, and I've talked a good bit about this with some other people, and I've been on some podcast interviews, and people are asking me, who have you seen that has done a really good job with gamification, or do you kind of just like the same way you just explained it, like let me come up with some ideas and do it all on my own, or are you seeing other people come up with good ideas that you can kind of I'll just say borrow from?
It's a good question. I would be a lot better at what we do if I actually like went into other people's membership sites. I'm not a consumer of this stuff in general. Like I go consume as much content as I need. Like I said, I'm a kind of do it first, think about it later type of person. So if I get enough information to be able to go act, I'll go act, and then I'll follow up and look at it later. Where a lot of people will probably go through like a whole course, study something out, plan it out, whatever, before they act. I just don't operate that way. So, it's funny. I launched a new membership site last year for this other kind of educational product that we put together, and I put in there that they get points every time they do something, right? If they respond to the homework, or if they reply to someone else's post. We had a forum in there where they could kind of talk about the homework assignments and things like that. And it was fascinating because I told them from the beginning, I don't know what the points are for. Like I wanted to gamify it, but I hadn't planned out anything about like what's going to happen when you get points.
Yeah.
They didn't care. They didn't care at all. There was like a heated battle for who would get the most points, and they had no clue what the benefit was going to be. And in the end, there was no benefit. It was just to be able to say, I got the most points.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to understand that psychology. Like, it's crazy.
I know. We went through it many years ago when we first started our membership site. We call it WishList Insider back then. And we were the same thing. We had a leaderboard, and it was like all-time leaderboard, and then a weekly leaderboard, and people just wanted their name to be up there. So they were doing all kinds of things. And then the other thing that I had this story with somebody, I know you're big into snowboarding, and I'm sure you've been out to Park City, and Vail really did this thing in this app, and they could track where your pass went. And the crazy challenges that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on the very last day and I'm going to go all the way across and all the way back just so that I could get a digital badge that showed up on my app that nobody else would even see. And it's like, it's fascinating psychology.
Yeah, totally. You know, we talked before we started the call that I've been doing these Spartan races, and they've done the same thing. You know, they have this thing called the trifecta. So if you do the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon distance all within 1 year, you get a trifecta. Now, like, people are getting 15, 20 trifectas in a year because you get extra badges for those, right? There's no benefit to it. You might get like an extra little medal occasionally, but there's no benefit other than like, I completed the trifecta. And then they've created a whole bunch of other badges too. Same type of thing, just to be able to say like, hey, I did something, and there's no benefit other than that digital badge.
Well, since you're so into fitness, I was talking with somebody last week and I've never joined it. I think it's called Strava, right? Are you on Strava?
Yeah, I am.
Would you say that that's they have a good model? I don't even know. Everybody I talk to is like, yeah, I posted on Strava, and it seems like it's just pushing them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a social network for runners and bikers, basically, right?
Okay.
And so I do mostly running, and you know, I'm not on there every day. I don't look at Strava every day, but when I was training, I was on there more. Like when I was training specifically for this one very intense race, I was on there more, and I was you start to get competitive, maybe just in your head with others. So, you know, other people, particularly that go to the gym that I go to, that train for these same types of races, you know, I'm looking at them and go, okay, well, he ran 12 miles yesterday, and you know, I'm a little bit faster than him, but if he keeps training like that, then I need to go run some extra miles. And you know, and yeah, it becomes a thing. Like, you show up at the gym, you're like, hey, I ran a faster pace than you yesterday or whatever. It's just kind of that beat your chest type of thing, competitiveness. So yeah, it's cool. I like it.
But it's all about psychology, I guess, and consumer behavior a bit.
And for that particular model, what's cool is it's probably more motivating to look at my own stats. So I have a bunch of different routes around my house that I run, and I'm always trying to beat my own time. I've gotten pretty into like tracking my heart rate and my steps per minute and like all the different metrics that they can track now just by having a watch on your wrist. And so I look at that stuff a lot more than I look at others on Strava. And I'm looking at my pace and looking at my heart rate. I'm like, okay, can I push that hill a little bit harder? You know, my heart feels like it's going to burst, but it looks like there's some room according to the metrics, you know? And so that's kind of cool, just the ability to continue to push yourself.
So that kind of brings us back to where you and I were talking about perseverance in entrepreneurism, being an entrepreneur. And a lot of times we deal with self-comparison and stuff like that. How do you think that some of that stuff can be related to us as entrepreneurs? I mean, I know that I have been motivated by seeing others accomplish things, and it has pushed me to go harder and go further. But then also I've struggled with the self-comparison. It's like, I'm never going to get there, or I can't do that. How do you think that we can have a clear balance?
Yeah. So you've probably heard, well, I guarantee you've heard the comment about, your wealth is the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most, right? That type of thing. I think it has less to do with what people think it has to do with, and more to do with when you hang around people, say, that are successful, more successful than you, and you learn that they're actually human, then you can cut yourself some slack. Because we all do what you just described, Tracy, where we look at someone like, oh man, I've been busting my hump for how many years, and I just haven't been able to achieve the success that they've achieved. I must be an idiot, or maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I should just go get another job or something, right? It's like you start beating yourself up. But if you actually talk to that person and you hear their story, and they tell you, well, yeah, I did this and I failed, and I did this and I had to file bankruptcy, and then I lost my family, and then this and that and the other, and you're like, oh, actually, maybe I'm doing pretty good. I'm all right. I'm on the path, And so I think that's a big part of it. We need to talk as a community of entrepreneurs. We need to talk more. We need to share the
Yeah.
failures along with the successes. Everyone likes to share the successes because it's funner, and then of course it's
Yeah.
there's a little pride moment there. Hey, look, I achieved whatever.
Yeah.
But we need to be more open in sharing the failures, so that other people realize, like, oh, that's just part of the path. That's just the way it goes, and it's okay. I think it's a big part of it. And another big part of it for me is, we just talked about fitness. I think the more that you can overcome challenges in your life that aren't
Mhm.
related to business,
Yeah.
the more you will be better at overcoming challenges in business. I
Yeah.
believe that's one of those things. It's like a muscle. You strengthen it in many different ways. So I think every business owner should be out, like, physically killing themselves every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's running or biking or swimming or something. Why? Because for one, it's just good for your mental health. But for
Yeah.
two, when you go out and you continually push past limits that you thought you had physically, it just teaches your mind and your body that you can. And so then when you run into challenges at work, it's like, "Oh, I can do this. I got it."
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you brought all that stuff up about your 5 closest friends, because I was just spending some time with my son who's in his early 20s, and that same topic came up. And
Yeah.
it's not like you can just go out and choose,
Right.
like, oh yeah, everybody would choose 5 billionaires. Like, I'm just gonna, and it's like, no, you end up being around the people who are all doing the same things. And
Yeah.
if you're in your younger 20s, you start here. And then as you push yourself and push yourself and push yourself, you get surrounded by the other people that were pushing yourselves,
Yep.
themselves. And then one thing you were talking about, the fitness. I used to have this thing on my wall that I made, and where I'd hang up all my race bibs and stuff. I was like, I want a good quote. What would be a good quote to put here? And then all the race bibs here. And I found one, found this site called Google. You can find anything you want there. And the quote that I always had right in front of me was, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with so many things that you just said. And I think I could go back and re-listen to this and unpack everything. But mainly, it's that why most people only want to share their successes and they want to keep their failures private.
Yeah.
As like you said it so well, that everybody's got challenges behind them.
Totally. Yeah. One third thing I'd add to that whole conversation is, we need to get better at enjoying the journey instead of saving all the joy for the successes, for the destination, right? Because the truth is, the destination never arrives. As you're growing a company, you get to a certain point of success, and we often miss it because our sights are set so far down the road. We don't even recognize, like, oh, wow, company just got to $1 million. But I'm set on 10 million or 100 million or whatever. And so, like, you don't celebrate those successes. We're not enjoying the journey. And, again, I'll bring in a religious reference here, but those who know the Bible, know that when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, they were told something to the effect of, by the sweat of your face, you'll eat bread every day of your life. And for me, like, understanding this idea that, like, hard work is like a divinely appointed responsibility, for us every day to just go out and work hard. And it's not supposed to be easy. If it was supposed to be easy, we would have all figured it out by now. And it's supposed to be hard. It's part of why we're here, to learn and to grow and to be challenged and grow past those challenges. And so I think if we just learn, and this is really hard for me because I'm a goal guy, and I like setting goals and achieving them and reaching for them, and I want to celebrate when I get there and not beforehand. But I'm working on this, trying to get better at, like, just enjoying the process, because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that. Tyler, we're almost at the time we'll wrap this up. I did want to ask you one more thing about your live events. I know you've done a lot of them in the past, and I know you're planning to do more in the future. We're kind of coming out of a time where we haven't been out to many live events. So if somebody wants to learn more about what you're doing in the future, what's the best way that they can maybe get on your list or see what you're up to and upcoming events?
Sure. Yeah. Boxoutmarketing.com is our main website. That's where we offer services for people who are using Keep. We're actually looking pretty soon. We'll be expanding into ActiveCampaign and ClickFunnels and some others. We do a lot of work in those now because people who are using Keep are often using these other tools.
Yeah.
But we'll be expanding into those services very soon. So if you need help just getting that stuff built at a very affordable rate, that's where you can find us there. I mentioned earlier that we launched a course last year, and that's called Marketing Strategy School. And just go marketingstrategyschool.com. It's not open for enrollment right now. We do mostly 8-week courses where we bring a cohort or a class of people in together and take them through those 8 weeks. We are looking at doing an event, a live event for that, March of next year. So if you go to marketingstrategyschool.com, get on the list there, then we'll let you know when that event happens.
Okay, great. Well, Tyler, I really appreciate your time. You've shared just a ton of wisdom with us, and it means a lot to us. And as always, we post all of our episodes on all the different podcast networks and also on our site at membershipsandcourses.com. Thanks again for everybody joining in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Well, you made it all the way to the end of the podcast, and I appreciate that you listened to the thing in its entirety. I hope that you received a ton of value. We spent a lot of time to try to bring on the best guests as possible and really pick their brains to provide value to you. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. It goes a long way in helping us reach more people with these topics about memberships, starting an online business, online courses, and all of that. If you get a lot of value, then please even share this on your social media or tell a friend or a colleague about this, somebody who needs to hear what we just talked about. On top of that, this podcast is sponsored by WishList Member. WishList Member is a WordPress plugin that allows you to convert your WordPress site into a fully functioning membership site where you can sell online courses, digital products, and the like. If you want to learn more, visit wishlistmember.com/free, and you'll get tons of free membership training, tons of valuable stuff just like you got from this podcast. It's just one of the efforts that the WishList Member team is doing. With that being said, thanks again. Take care.